club on the second level? Or how they go?
Clubs on the first level.
Okay, I remember. So we're talking about 7th T Lounge?
Yeah. And there was something 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 doors down.
Right.
On the same side. I'm not sure what the name of that one was. You mentioned something about Harlem Club.
Little Harlem.
Little Harlem.
Yeah. There were at least 2 other joints in this block.
Okay.
One of them was more of a floor show type joint, and one of them was a bebop type.
Okay. Okay.
And then the 17th, and I don't know exactly what the whether I think those clubs were contemporaneous. I think this club, I think 7th T came later.
Okay, that was 7th during my time. I do remember something else. One of those other clubs down there that was not around or not enough going on that we went in there on a regular basis. But 7th T was a kind of a staple. I'm pretty sure I saw John Malachi in there with Charlie Rouse. Okay. In this club here, and it was not same size as that building there now. But it was right down the street from the theater, and as a teenager, this is before I worked at the Howard Theater. We would go to things around on U Street because the movie we had to come from Alexandria to the Lincoln Theater, where there was a black theater that had some of the more up-to-date movies, because there was a movie theater in the city of Alexandria, but didn't have a lot of things. So if we really wanted to splurge, we can. Oh man, when we wanted to get involved in something, we went to the Lincoln, and many times. Booker T and Lincoln, those theaters are that on U Street. And many times we could walk around here to one of these clubs. And I do remember hearing some of those guys in the 7th T.
Now, in talking to other people about working at the Howard, that became a place where the musicians who were, say, in some of the traveling big bands, and names I've heard would be like either Ray Charles or Count Basie, not so much, but Ray Charles' band or Fats Domino's band or Lloyd Price's band.
Good players. That's
where they would hang and play in these clubs.
Yes.
Once they were done.
I saw, I was reading a obituary the other day about a baritone player by the name of, they used to call him Hog Cooper, Leroy Cooper.
Okay.
That name?
Yeah, that's
played with Ray
Charles. Right.
Yeah, he died about a few months ago, this year. But he, I can remember him in places other than on the bandstand at the theater. And he was a great player at that time, and he continued to play. He died several months ago. He was 80-something, 82 or 3. But those kind of people, and then some other players that Phil Gilbo was a trumpet player with Ray Charles. The trumpet player that Jerry that taught Marcus.
Belgrade.
All those I can remember coming through with Ray Charles. Didn't necessarily hear them, in the club because Ray Charles would give everybody a chance to play. So that kind of thing.
So let's. So you remember everything on the first level. You don't remember anything on the second level.
The thing I remember is the first level. Now, hopefully, we can verify that.
Okay.
Confirm that.
Do you remember a restaurant called Clores?
Where was that?
That was on 7th Street, and that's why I was referring to the notion that there might have been a restaurant on the ground level and a club on the second level.
It could have been. I don't remember that too well. But there was another restaurant 2 blocks down on this side called the Southern
Kitchen.
I think so.
Okay. It's close. when you were doing your stuff at the Howard?
Well, first of all, there were 4 or 5 shows there. And, so when you came to the theater, you didn't like leave to go back home or anything. And we just hang around here the whole time. Not a lot of things that would be of interest, you know, to anybody other than musicians, because there was not that much going on here. But we had a we had you know, just the camaraderie of the guys. So that was really kind of the only thing.
You remember the hot dog stand, pool hall, any of that?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay. So just as we walk down the street, point out what you remember.
Now the pool hall was one of these windows here, either the first or second one. Wouldn't be both. It was probably the first one. Now, since I didn't shoot pool, but I didn't know other guys who went there and shoot pool. The time that I was working at the theater, the pool hall was still in operation. I assume that they had a pool hall in every big city, or 1 or 2 or 3.
Okay.
Because we had a pool hall in Alexandria on Queen Street. But I don't, you know, in both of these buildings, one of them was, I guess, the hot dog stand, because the pool hall didn't take up the whole block.
Okay.
So one of those was probably that hot dog stand that you mentioned. We had, I'm just trying to think, when I came here to work, if there was a show going on, I would really just kind of hang here. You couldn't go too far because the shows were an hour or 2 between each show. So after one show, you almost had to get ready for the next show. I parked, had a place that I parked on T Street, straight, the street that I'm pointing at. One of my colleagues at Parker Gray, who was a teacher who taught me, and her name was Flora Chase. Her husband was Tommy Chase, was a piano player. Okay. He worked with Keith and all those, but they lived 2 blocks down. So many times between shows, I'd walk to her house if they were home, especially on weekends where I'm here 2 or 3 days in a row. But the first show was at 2:30, and the last show was at 10 o'clock at night. So it shows that went on and on. I used to park in front of her house, and she'd always save me a parking place. That's what I was telling you about being safe. Now, she never had to shoot anybody, but she always had a parking place for me right in front of her house, and when I leave after the show, go and get my car and go home. But
so, I mean, create the vision. There's a show. What does the street look like the night of the show? And so the show started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
Would that show be sold out?
No, not necessarily. But the next show was probably at 6 o'clock. That one would be not necessarily sold out, but it'd be a lot more people than this 2 o'clock show. I never could understand that first show because although people that I knew who went to high school around there said many of them played hooky from high school to go to that first show. Instead of being in school, they were at that first show. But that show would not be sold out, but it depended on who was there, you know. If it were Temptations, that would be sold out.
So who are you guys supporting?
Temptations, Gladys Knight, Smokey Robinson. I don't think Dionne Warwick ever played here, but many times Smokey. Ray Charles played there. Times we didn't support it. We were there to play behind some of the other.
So what would like the lineup be of a show?
Well, it would, as I say, and mostly all the time, it would be one of the R&B singers that I'd have to go back and get the exact name. But
And how long were they performing? Half an hour? I mean, were you rotating?
Yeah.
15 minutes, half hour. I mean, what would that pattern look like?
well, it would be sitting by the dock of the bay. What's his name?
Otis Redding.
Yeah, he would come on, although he would have his own band, he'd have his rhythm section and all. Sometimes he had arrangements for the house band to play, but they wouldn't have more than one of that stature on a show. So if the show is an hour long, they'd probably do half an hour or more, and then they'd have some lesser known act,
Including local groups?
Yeah. Bill Harris was there on many occasions, although Bill Harris was more national than local at the times.
I mean, he was supporting a singing group.
Right.
Like the Orioles.
That kind of stuff, yeah.
Okay, so you had your bird groups, you had the Motown, you had the Memphis stuff. So that's what, were you having comedians at that point? Were they showing films?
Red Fox was, I've seen Red Fox in there. Mom's Maybe, I've seen it. Flip Wilson, I've seen Flip. And in fact, they were either part of one of these other shows that we talked about. But yeah, some of them, I mean, those who went on to great prominence were some of the acts.
Were dancers a part of it? Tap dancers?
I don't remember too many tap
dancers?
Right. The only tap dancers I remember, not a lot, but the ones of the brothers.
Nicholas Brothers?
Nicholas Brothers, yeah. I can remember something like that. And there may have been another, one or two, but not a lot. But I do remember them as being, and had very well arranged music for them. And
so when did you guys rehearse the stuff?
The show comes in on Friday, and we rehearse Friday morning, and do the show that evening.
And then it runs through Thursday.
Following Thursday.
And so Friday morning you're into another
the next show, right. And I remember vividly, sometimes being here for a month, 7 days a week. And I only worked at this theater for a year and a half, maybe not 2 years, but about a year and a half. But there were some periods of time that one show, didn't overlap because one show ended and the next show started. But the rehearsal was in the morning.
How did you accommodate that with your teaching job?
I don't know, man. It's hard to think about that.
The statute of limitations is over, so you can say what you did. They can't get you now.
At that time, when I got heavily involved with this, that took a couple of years, 2 or 3 years with Howard. I mean, with the theater. At that time, the integration business, the school integration, was at the very beginning, and at a very tense time. And I can remember one principal who, a white principal, I was supposed to report to her school, and when I reported to her, at her class, I was supposed to see her in the afternoon. And when I reported to her, she ignored me, and I sat in the office as long as, she said, I'll be with you. So she never came to talk to me. So I went back to the supervisor, my supervisor, who was not a part of that school, but he was the person who assigned me to that school. So I sat and waited. He said, look, it's her problem. I'm sure you can find something to do. He didn't know I was. So there were many days I had afternoon classes. I mean, where I would have had afternoon classes. That the Creator made it possible for me to work at the House Theater.
Just kind of fell through the cracks.
Yeah, and it worked out fine. Now, I mean, it wasn't like that for 2 or 3 years, but there were times when I had to be here, and it worked out just fine. So That's not the first time I told that story, but that is a fact that it wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Let's keep walking. Do you remember the club that's right across the street going on at the time?
It was going on, but it was more of a bar in the sense that I don't remember. I don't remember eating there because I couldn't afford to eat in there, and all the big, the big guys, the big people, basically probably ate there. And
by big people, do you mean?
I'm talking about big acts.
Okay, so the artists would go there.
Yeah, and we used to stand on the corner here and watch them going, in and out of the Cecilia's, right? Is that the name of the club?
I think at one point it was called the Stage Door, and then maybe later it became Cecilia's.
Okay. Yeah, okay. For some reason I remember both. And I thought it was a door back in.
I think you're talking about the Stage Door?
Yeah.
I think we've got to walk down. It's kind of where that light is.
Okay.
Because I have some pictures of musicians, of Ellington's musicians coming out of.
Oh yeah.
Out of that door.
Okay.
So do you remember, for example, young people sort of hanging around to meet musicians, engage them?
Yeah.
To either for autograph purposes or for the purpose of trying to start a relationship, to learn, to be mentored?
Well, not for that. Not for that. I just remember people so fascinated and in awe of some of those people coming through. But because I'm going to say that most of the big acts probably wouldn't have time to stand and talk to anybody at the time. But they did have a whole slew of people hanging out here. It was very crowded, and some of them were young people just to be in that around those kind of personalities.
What did Wiltberger look? Was this? What did it look like at that time?
I don't
look like this.
No, absolutely not. It was really just an alley in the sense that I don't remember sidewalks. Now there probably were, but I don't remember.
There were people living back here, correct?
I don't remember that. Okay. I don't remember. And in fact, I was kind of assuming it was more warehouses, but they probably could have been people living. And that green building right there may not have been there when I worked here. There may have been a parking lot back there.
Now my dad was here in the early 40s, and I think his a lady that had been his girlfriend at Wilberforce, he came here around probably about 41, and he worked in the newspaper business here,
right.
Afro-American and some other things, the Washington Tribune. But one time he took me back here to a lady's house that was the mother of this young lady that he had, dated while he was at Wilberforce, and I think she was deceased.
Okay.
But he was close enough that whenever he came back, he would always seek her out. So I remember him, taking me to somebody's house back here.
It's very possible that when I worked in the 60s, that this had started deteriorating to where it was not inhabitable. I don't remember. Well, obviously it didn't look like this. But the thing that I remember about the period of time that I was here on a regular basis, that this was more like warehouses and just places that were not inhabited. Now, you're talking about prior to the time that I worked
my
there.
dad brought it, who wouldn't have been that, because he would have. I probably didn't remember anything before, or much before the 60s.
Okay.
So, I mean, if he brought, I was born in '48, so
right.
if he brought me back here, and showed me something, it would have been, and I can remember it.
In the 60s?
It would have been in the late 50s or 60s.
Okay.
And I don't remember it being a nice place.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
all right.
It was, it was alley housing.
Okay, we're probably talking about the same thing. We probably have the same impression. But the thing that I recall was that this was more of a warehouse kind of situation,
Okay.
something that was, on the downside, and it was about to, and shortly now, remember that the riots in '68, and I only worked here maybe 67 and part of '68, but once the riots took place, I'm pretty sure this building was closed for the next year or two. And things were already pretty bad back at this point. You were asking me how we adjusted or how we dealt with things as they were changing and as they changed over to the newer. But this whole area here, the thing that I remember is that it was deteriorating at the time, and it was slower, and I probably didn't know it quite as much because I was really still just so excited about working in this building that a lot of that I wasn't aware of.
So where were you the night of the riots?
I lived in Arlington there, and I had to stop. I obviously had to stop working because Bobby, I went to work with him probably the late, 67, and
That's
so
at FCC.
yeah. Well, no, I worked with his band first.
Okay.
Before the FCC hadn't been founded at that point, but I worked with his band from starting the late '60s. 67, and put it that way.
So by that time, you guys were out. When you got to the Blue Notes, you were done with the Howard Theater Band.
Right. In fact, he was the one who convinced me that maybe he had more to offer me than the Howard Theater did. And that's exactly the way it turned out. I got the exposure and the experience of working in this building, and it was it was money that I appreciated, but I found that I was from that point on, I was going to be able to make as much money as I would have made here. But fate did not present it that way, because fate said that this building wasn't going to be any longer. I wouldn't be able to come here. So for some reason I went with him, and I had already stopped working.
Just to be clear, so before the riots came, you had already gone with Bobby?
Yes.
Okay.
Riots came in '68, and I may have started working with him in '67.
So how did you get in the band?
We were working at the theater.
No, how did you get into the Howard Theater Band? How did that happen?
That's a good question. I think it could have been. Charlie Hampton had something to do with it. I had played something with him.
So
somewhere.
he was in the band under Rick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And connection between me, Thomas Delane, the trumpet player I was talking about, who lives in Baltimore now, and maybe someone else that we may have had some kind of connection with. Obviously, it was music that we were. I don't remember coming into audition. Either Charlie Hampton, or someone had heard us doing something else.
So your 9th Street stuff preceded the Howard stuff?
Right. I'm sure that had something to do with it. Just the fact that I had been in this environment and in this area. So the 9th Street stuff had, I'm sure it had something to do with it.
Was your reading more important than your improvising?
Well, yeah.
Were you guys, were you playing charts or playing head arrangements or both?
Both, but mostly charts.
Okay.
You know, here or
Here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, mostly charts. Obviously, in the small bands that we played on U Street, on the 9th Street that I mentioned, those were for things, and tunes that standard repertoire stuff.
When you were working under Rick, was he doing all the writing, or were there other writers?
No, he would, and again, I only worked with Rick's very last years here. In fact, his last period. In fact, Rick was gone after my first couple of times, and Charlie Hampton took over the band.
Okay.
In fact, there may have been some interim other person, but yes, Rick did most of the writing. And the writing was both for his band, and he also wrote for some of the acts that did arrangements for some of the acts that used this size group.
Was Bobby in the band with you?
Bobby was in the band, and in fact, we had he may have been in the band before I came in. But
did you meet him in that circumstance?
In that circumstance, okay. Right? That's exactly where I met him. And so, I mean, it's just a turn of events that kind of took place, that kind of fitted together. And now that I think about, when you're trading one thing for the other, sometimes you have to kind of give a lot of consideration whether this was a good decision to go from this, because you're trading the Howard Theater to go with an R&B band, or cabaret band, and they really don't match. They don't.
Was this the best job in DC?
Best job in DC, as far as I'm concerned. And this is prior to.
I mean, under that social reality, this is one of the places that cats aspired to get a gig.
Absolutely.
Were they held jealously, the positions?
Oh, sure, sure. And I'm sure that the people the band leaders who were starting with Rick and the people who had the band, you had to be kind of in with the person who was. I'm sure Rick would not have hired any of his enemies. And same thing with Charlie Hampton. So it was a political kind of deal going there too.
How much of the personnel can you remember? Like, who was playing piano, or who was playing bass, or who was playing drums?
A lot. Gus Sims may have played here quite a bit. Bass, Keita may have. I don't remember Keita that often here, but Herschel McGinnis played. Andrew White was here, played both tenor and
so
and
he
bass.
Must have been a student at Howard at that point, or close to it.
Well, close to it, yeah.
Okay.
But I'll have to cut. I do remember. I mean, quite a few that did not. Clarence Knight was around at the time, although we didn't necessarily. I don't remember being in the band at the exact same time as him.
I think he was more under Rick.
Rick, right. But there were others that were in the band that had not been full-time musicians. There were probably a few of them like that. There was a guy who was had an insurance company across the street, and I'm trying to think of his name. He played baritone in this band. In fact, I took his place because he got too busy with his insurance company, and I came in playing baritone in Charlie Hampton's band. But I'll have to make sure I get some of those other names. There were quite a few.
So.
I'm beginning to fade, brother.
Well, we got a lot today.
Yeah. And it's all one I have. And I wonder if Clarence has it.
Yeah, he does. Clarence does. He showed me some stuff. Showed me some stuff that he had. But they're like Polaroids.
Yeah, so. Yeah. But when that's all you have to get what you
Well, no, it is what it is. But like I seen some photographs that they were like the photographers that used to come around and they would shoot these pictures, and they would be like a circle.
Yeah.
And maybe like you might be the center.
Right.
They make it for you, but then they have all the maybe people you were playing with.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
You know, different things of that sort.
Well,